Stress, anxiety, and the feeling of being overwhelmed. These are emotions many of us struggle with on a daily basis. They creep into our lives unexpectedly, often at the most inconvenient times. For me, it was during a moment when everything in my life seemed to fall apart. My career, which I had spent years building, crumbled unexpectedly. My health deteriorated, and I found myself overwhelmed by a sense of loss, as if I were sinking into a dark abyss with no way out. I had nothing left, nothing to hold on to. At that time, I was introduced to the teachings of Zen Buddhism, a path that promised peace, but at first, it seemed far too abstract. How could ancient teachings help me in the midst of such modern chaos? The answer came when I discovered an ancient technique practiced by Zen monks, a practice that had been used for centuries to maintain calm in the face of intense suffering. It wasn't about pushing away the emotions or pretending they didn't exist. Instead, it was a method that neurologists have recently discovered can physically restructure the brain's stress response in just 6 minutes a day. That was the breakthrough for me. You see, when everything falls apart, the key is not to control what happens around you, because that is an impossible task. Rather, the real challenge lies in how we respond to what is happening. The practice I'm about to share with you is not some easy fix for stress, but a powerful tool to develop a mind that remains unshaken in the face of life's inevitable challenges. I want to take you on a journey, one that will help you cultivate an unbreakable mind, a mind that can weather even the toughest storms. But before we dive into the technique itself, let me tell you a story, one that will set the stage for everything you need to learn. A Zen master once held a tea ceremony for his students. He had many beautiful teacups, each one a work of art, carefully crafted and elegant in design. But when it came time for the master to choose a cup for himself, he selected the most worn, the most imperfect one, an old, cracked teacup. The students, noticing this, were puzzled. After the ceremony, one bold student gathered the courage to ask the master, "Why did you choose that cracked cup? Surely one of the perfect cups would have been more fitting for you." The Zen master smiled gently and replied, "Because this cup reminds me of the truth. Just like this cup, we are all cracked in some way. We all have our imperfections, our wounds, our histories. But it is through these cracks that the light enters. It is in our imperfections that we find our strength, our compassion, and our connection to others." The master's words struck me deeply, and they continue to resonate with me today. You see, for much of my life, I had been chasing an impossible ideal, one of perfection. I believed that in order to be strong, I had to present an image of flawless invulnerability. I worked hard to suppress my imperfections, to hide my vulnerabilities, and to project an image of someone who had it all together. But in reality, that image was a lie. It wasn't until I embraced my imperfections, my cracks, that I began to understand what true strength really meant. It's easy to think that strength is about being tough, about being unshaken by the world's challenges. But the more I reflect on it, the more I realize that true strength is found in vulnerability. True strength comes from accepting who we are, flaws and all, and being willing to learn from our struggles. There is a crucial lesson in this for all of us. You don't need to be perfect to be whole. Trying to achieve an ideal of unwavering strength often backfires. It creates a rigid mindset, one that makes us more vulnerable to breaking when life's inevitable challenges hit us. Instead, we need to embrace our imperfections and vulnerabilities because they are what make us resilient. They are what make us human. So, the first step in cultivating an unbreakable mind is to radically accept yourself, cracked cup and all. This is where true strength begins. But I know what you might be thinking. Acceptance is fine, but what about actually doing something to improve my mental strength? What about taking control of my life? That's a valid question, and I can understand the desire for control. We all want to feel in control of our circumstances, but there is an illusion here. We often spend so much energy trying to control the things around us, the people, the situations, the outcomes, that we neglect the one thing we can truly control: our own minds, our own reactions. There's an old Zen story that illustrates this beautifully. It's about a farmer who had only one horse. One day, the horse ran away. The neighbors, seeing this as bad luck, came to offer their condolences. "What terrible luck," they said. But the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it several wild horses. The neighbors rejoiced. "What great luck," they exclaimed. But again, the farmer replied, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, but he was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors lamented, "What awful luck." But again, the farmer responded, "Maybe." Then the army came to conscript young men for war. Because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was spared. The neighbors, of course, cried, "How fortunate! What amazing luck!" And once more, the farmer replied, "Maybe." The farmer's wisdom lies in his understanding of impermanence. What appears to be good luck can lead to unforeseen consequences, and what seems like bad luck may ultimately bring unexpected blessings. This story isn't about fatalism. It's about understanding that life's events are interconnected and that we rarely see the full picture. Our judgments of good and bad are often based on limited information. When you train your mind to accept the maybe, you create space for resilience. You become less attached to specific outcomes, more adaptable to whatever life brings your way. This is the heart of cultivating a resilient mind. As we continue on this journey, let's explore another key element of developing an unbreakable mind: the concept of the 8 worldly winds. These forces, according to the Buddha, are the inevitable ups and downs of life that we all must face. They are the winds that buffet us at every turn, testing our emotional resilience and, at times, making us feel as though we are adrift in a storm. The 8 worldly winds are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disgrace. These forces are constantly shifting, pulling us in different directions, and they have a profound effect on our emotional state. When we experience pleasure, we are elated. But when pain comes, we are crushed. When we gain something we desire, we feel triumphant. But when we lose it, we fall into despair. Praise fills us with pride, but blame tears us down. Fame brings a sense of validation, but disgrace takes it all away in an instant. We all experience these winds in different forms, but the core message of the Buddhist teachings is this: these experiences are inevitable. They are part of the human condition. We cannot escape them. The key, then, is not to try to avoid the winds or resist them, but to learn how to stand firm in the face of them. Imagine this scenario in modern life. You pour your heart and soul into a project at work, spending countless hours perfecting it. But when it's time for your boss to review it, they criticize it harshly in front of your colleagues. The wind of blame blows fiercely, and you feel humiliated and defeated. Your mind races with thoughts of self-doubt, wondering if you'll ever be able to succeed. Or perhaps you've been working tirelessly to build your social media presence, and after weeks of effort, a video you post goes viral. You're showered with praise and validation, but soon enough, the view count begins to drop, and the negative comments start rolling in. The wind of disgrace whirls around you, and suddenly, you're questioning your worth and your abilities. These situations are perfect examples of how the worldly winds blow through our lives, shaping our emotions and testing our sense of self. Our natural instinct is often to react. When we experience blame, we want to defend ourselves. When we face disgrace, we want to retreat or lash out. But it's precisely in these moments that we need to pause, take a deep breath, and remember that the winds are impermanent. This is where mindfulness becomes invaluable. Mindfulness allows us to observe our thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being swept away by them. It creates a space between the stimulus and reaction. When we can recognize that the winds are simply temporary experiences, we can allow them to pass without clinging to them. Let's go back to the example of the work project. When your boss criticizes your work, instead of immediately defending yourself or spiraling into self-criticism, mindfulness teaches you to pause, take a breath, step back, and observe the emotions that arise, perhaps anger, frustration, or embarrassment. But don't let them control your actions. Acknowledge them, but don't identify with them. They are just passing clouds in the sky of your mind. Mindfulness also helps us manage our expectations. When you pour your heart into something and it is met with praise, it's easy to feel invincible, but that too is impermanent. Praise will fade. On with it, the high that it brings. Likewise, when you face criticism, it may sting in the moment, but it too will pass. It was only through mindfulness that I was able to navigate the winds of both praise and blame that came my way. I remember a time when one of my videos went viral on social medias. I felt on top of the world, basking in the praise and recognition that flowed in from all corners. But soon after, I experienced the winds of negativity. People criticized my work, tearing apart every detail. They accused me of things I didn't do, and the praise turned into blame. For a moment, I felt the weight of those criticisms. I wanted to retaliate, to defend myself, but instead, I took a step back. I reminded myself that the winds of the world are impermanent. I didn't have to react to them. Instead of allowing the negativity to define me, I I chose to return to a state of calm and acceptance. I allowed myself to feel the discomfort, but I didn't let it consume me. It wasn't easy, but in doing so, I was able to center myself again. This is the power of mindfulness. It allows you to observe the worldly winds and choose how to respond. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about creating the space to recognize them as they arise and letting them pass without being swept away. When we can do this, we are no longer victims of the winds. We can navigate life's storms with grace and equanimity. But mindfulness alone is not enough. It is also essential to cultivate self-compassion, especially when we face the winds of blame or disgrace. The inner critic is a formidable adversary, one that often gets louder when we are faced with criticism or failure. That voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, that you'll never succeed, that voice is not your ally. In Zen teachings, there is a powerful metaphor for the mind that I find helpful. Imagine you have a cup filled with muddy water. If you keep stirring the water, the mud will never settle. But if you leave the water undisturbed, the mud will eventually sink to the bottom and the water will become clear. Your mind is like that cup. When you are constantly fighting against your doubts, fears, and self-criticism, the mud will never settle. But if you stop fighting, if you allow your thoughts to simply arise and pass without judgment, the mind will gradually clear. The key is to stop stirring the water. Let the thoughts come and go, and they will eventually settle on their own. This is not easy, of course. It takes practice and patience. But when you cultivate this ability to observe your thoughts without judgment, you begin to silence the inner critic. You begin to create a buffer between the external world and your internal reactions. And this is where self-compassion comes in. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and care that you would offer a dear friend. When you make a mistake or fall short, instead of berating yourself, practice self-compassion. Understand that everyone makes mistakes, that you are not defined by your failures. In the same way that you would offer compassion to someone you love, extend that same compassion to yourself. Self-compassion is the antidote to the inner critic. When you treat yourself with kindness, the harsh voice of judgment begins to fade. And with that, the path to a resilient and unbreakable mind becomes clearer. Now that we've explored the importance of mindfulness and self-compassion in cultivating an unbreakable mind, let's delve into the next crucial element, the art of forgiving ourselves. This may seem like an obvious part of self-compassion, but it deserves its own focus because of how transformative forgiveness can be in the journey of healing and resilience. When I first began my practice of Zen Buddhism, I found that I was very good at being hard on myself. I had spent years trying to be perfect, striving for an image of invulnerability that I thought would keep me safe from pain. But in reality, that pursuit was only setting me up for disappointment. Every failure felt like a personal attack. Every misstep a confirmation of my inadequacy. I was so focused on my shortcomings that I couldn't see my own progress. This is a trap that many of us fall into. We carry around our past mistakes, failures, and regrets like a heavy burden, believing that we need to be punished for them. But the truth is, this self-punishment only reinforces the negative emotions we're trying to overcome. It prevents us from moving forward, and it keeps us trapped in a cycle of shame and self-doubt. The first step to breaking this cycle is learning to forgive ourselves. But forgiveness is not always easy. When we are faced with our own mistakes or failures, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-criticism. We may believe that by holding on to our guilt, we are somehow punishing ourselves for what we did wrong. But in reality, holding on to guilt only keeps us bound to the past. There is a beautiful Zen story that illustrates the power of forgiveness. It's about a monk who had been practicing for many years. One day, after a particularly long and difficult meditation session, he found himself feeling overwhelmed by the weight of his thoughts. His mind was filled with doubts, and he couldn't seem to shake the feeling of inadequacy. He went to his teacher for guidance and said, "Master, I feel as though I have failed in my practice. I am filled with self-doubt, and I don't know how to move past it. What should I do?" The teacher looked at him for a long moment and then said, "You must forgive yourself. You have been carrying this burden for too long. Let it go." The monk was surprised. He had expected some profound instruction on how to clear his mind or overcome his doubts. But the teacher's advice was simple yet powerful. Forgive yourself. The monk, though initially skeptical, took the teacher's words to heart. Slowly but surely, he began to let go of his self-judgment. Over time, he found that his practice became easier and his mind clearer. The burden of self-doubt that had weighed him down was lifted, not through more effort or striving, but through the simple act of forgiveness. This story serves as a reminder that the act of forgiving ourselves is not about ignoring our mistakes or pretending they didn't happen. It's about releasing the emotional charge we attach to them. When we forgive ourselves, we free up energy that we can use to move forward, rather than staying trapped in the past. Forgiveness is a gift that we give ourselves, and it is a crucial step in the process of building resilience. When we forgive ourselves, we allow ourselves to learn and grow without being weighed down by shame or guilt. We stop seeing our failures as defining moments and instead view them as opportunities for growth. This process of self-forgiveness can also be deeply transformative for our relationships with others. When we learn to forgive ourselves, we are more likely to forgive others as well. We recognize that everyone, including ourselves, is imperfect. And when we let go of our need to be perfect, we create space for greater compassion and understanding. But self-forgiveness doesn't mean that we never take responsibility for our actions. It simply means that we stop punishing ourselves for the mistakes we've made. We acknowledge them, learn from them, and move on. We release the guilt, not the responsibility. It is in this release of guilt that true strength is found. You see, when we let go of our past mistakes, we allow ourselves to be present in the moment. We stop holding on to the weight of the past and free ourselves to experience life as it is, without the constant burden of judgment and shame. I remember a time when I struggled with forgiving myself for a mistake I made at work. I had mishandled a situation that affected a project I had been working on for months. The project failed, and I was consumed by guilt. I thought that if I kept punishing myself, I would somehow atone for my mistake. But instead of learning from it, I became paralyzed by shame. It wasn't until I started practicing Zen principles, particularly mindfulness and self-compassion, that I realized the futility of holding onto that guilt. I began to acknowledge my mistake, but I also acknowledged that it didn't define me. I forgave myself for the error, and in doing so, I freed myself to take the lessons from that experience and apply them to future situations. This is the power of self-forgiveness. It gives you the freedom to move forward. It allows you to learn and grow, rather than staying stuck in the past. It's a form of self-liberation, a way to release yourself from the chains of guilt and shame that prevent you from embracing the fullness of life. As you continue on this path of cultivating an unbreakable mind, I encourage you to practice self-forgiveness. When you make a mistake or fail, take a moment to reflect, to acknowledge your missteps, but then let go. Release the burden of guilt and allow yourself to grow from the experience. This practice of forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. Every time we make a mistake, we have the opportunity to forgive ourselves, to let go of the guilt, and to move forward with greater wisdom and compassion. In doing so, we become more resilient, more adaptable, and more capable of navigating life's inevitable ups and downs. Forgiving yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, and in doing so, you will find the strength to continue on your path, no matter what challenges may come your way. Now that we've touched upon the importance of mindfulness, self-compassion, and forgiveness in building an unbreakable mind, we turn our attention to another central practice in Zen Buddhism, embracing the impermanence of life. Impermanence is a fundamental teaching in Buddhist philosophy, and it offers profound wisdom for navigating the challenges and struggles of daily life. In fact, understanding and accepting impermanence is one of the most powerful ways to cultivate resilience and develop a mind that remains unshaken in the face of adversity. In our modern world, we tend to seek stability and security. We chase after things that we believe will bring us lasting happiness, whether it's a successful career, financial security, or fulfilling relationships. But the truth is, nothing in life is permanent. Everything changes, and often in ways we cannot predict or control. The job we thought would last forever may disappear. The relationship we thought was stable may end, and the health we took for granted may falter. This recognition of impermanence is not meant to make us fearful or cynical. On the contrary, it is a deeply liberating realization. When we accept the impermanent nature of life, we free ourselves from the need to control everything, and we can begin to appreciate the fleeting beauty of each moment. We stop clinging to things, and instead, we learn to embrace life as it is, in its ever-changing and dynamic form. One of the most powerful Zen teachings about impermanence is encapsulated in the story of the Zen master's final words. A Zen master who had lived a long and peaceful life was on his deathbed, surrounded by his students. They had been with him for many years, learning from his wisdom and guidance. As he lay there, preparing to leave this world, the students asked him for one final teaching, one last piece of wisdom. The Zen master smiled gently and said, "Everything is impermanent, including this body. When I pass, remember that it is not the end, but simply another step in the cycle of life. Nothing lasts forever, but in that truth, there is freedom. With those words, he closed his eyes and passed away peacefully. The students were deeply moved by his final teaching. It was a reminder that death is not to be feared, but rather accepted as part of the natural flow of existence. Just as the seasons change, so too does life, always shifting, always moving forward. This understanding of impermanence is crucial for developing resilience. When we grasp that everything changes, we begin to see that our struggles, no matter how overwhelming they may feel, are also temporary. The difficult emotions we experience, anger, sadness, frustration, are just like the clouds that pass through the sky. They may appear dark and heavy, but in time, they will dissipate. And when they do, we are left with the clear, open sky once again. When I was going through my own period of crisis, it was the recognition of impermanence that helped me regain my footing. I felt as though everything I had worked for was slipping away. My career, my health, my sense of stability, it all seemed to be falling apart. But then, I remembered the Zen teachings on impermanence. I reminded myself that this, too, would pass. I didn't need to hold on to the fear or the anxiety. I could simply allow the feelings to rise and fall, knowing that they were temporary. This practice of acknowledging impermanence doesn't mean that we become indifferent or detached from life. On the contrary, it helps us appreciate each moment more fully. We stop taking things for granted, and we learn to savor the present moment, knowing that it will never come again in exactly the same way. When we understand that everything is fleeting, we begin to cherish the small moments of beauty and joy that we might otherwise overlook. Zen practice offers us a way to stay grounded in the midst of impermanence. One of the key elements of this practice is meditation, particularly the practice of mindfulness meditation. Through meditation, we train ourselves to observe the ebb and flow of our thoughts, emotions, and experiences without getting attached to them. We learn to watch the mind as if it were a river, with each thought or feeling flowing downstream, coming and going without resistance. This is a powerful tool for cultivating resilience. When we are able to see our emotions as passing events, rather than permanent states of being, we can approach life with a sense of equanimity. Whether we are experiencing joy or sorrow, success or failure, we recognize that these moments are just that moments, and as they come, they will also go. When I first began my meditation practice, I was often frustrated by the constant barrage of thoughts that filled my mind. I wanted peace, but it felt as though my mind was constantly churning with worries and distractions. But over time, I came to understand that this was simply part of the process. The thoughts, the worries, the feelings, they were impermanent. They would come and go, and my job was not to fight them, but to observe them without judgment. Through this practice, I began to develop a deep sense of inner peace. I no longer clung to my thoughts or emotions. I no longer tried to control them. I simply allowed them to be, and in doing so, I discovered a freedom that I had never known before. This is the essence of Zen practice, the ability to be present with life as it is, without trying to change it or control it. By embracing impermanence, we cultivate a deep sense of acceptance and equanimity. We stop clinging to the past or fearing the future, and we begin to live more fully in the present moment. In our fast-paced world, where change is constant and uncertainty is everywhere, the ability to embrace impermanence is a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges. It allows us to let go of our attachments and expectations, and to respond to whatever comes our way with clarity and resilience. So, the next time you find yourself caught in the storm of life, whether it's a personal setback, a difficult situation, or a moment of intense emotion, remember the teaching of impermanence. Acknowledge that this, too, will pass, and in that recognition, find peace. As we continue to explore the path of cultivating an unbreakable mind, let's now focus on one of the most essential practices in Zen Buddhism: equanimity. In simple terms, equanimity is the ability to remain balanced, calm, and composed, regardless of the circumstances. It is the quality that allows us to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs with grace, without being knocked off course by emotional turbulence. In a world filled with distractions and challenges, equanimity is a true source of strength. The Buddha often spoke of the 8 worldly winds, the forces of pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace that buffet us throughout our lives. These winds are inevitable. They are part of being human. But how we respond to them determines whether we remain anchored in our true selves or whether we are tossed about like a ship caught in a storm. Equanimity is not about suppressing emotions or pretending that life's challenges don't affect us. It's about developing the ability to face them without being overwhelmed by them. In other words, equanimity is not about being indifferent. Rather, it's about responding to life's ups and downs with a clear, calm mind. It is the ability to observe our emotional responses without becoming entangled in them. One of the best ways to develop equanimity is through mindfulness meditation. In meditation, we learn to observe our thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise. Instead of reacting to them, we simply watch them without judgment or attachment. We acknowledge their presence, but we don't let them control us. This practice helps us develop a greater awareness of how we respond to life's challenges. Over time, it teaches us to remain grounded, no matter what is happening around us. I remember a time when I was facing a particularly difficult challenge at work. I had put in long hours on a project, pouring my energy and creativity into it. When the project was finally presented to my team, it was met with harsh criticism. My immediate reaction was one of defensiveness. I wanted to explain myself, to justify my decisions, and to prove that I was right. But I paused. I took a deep breath and remembered my Zen training. Instead of reacting impulsively, I chose to observe my emotions without judgment. I acknowledged my frustration and disappointment, but I didn't allow them to dictate my behavior. I listened carefully to the feedback, understanding that it was an opportunity for growth. The process wasn't easy, but it allowed me to remain calm in a situation that could have easily triggered an emotional outburst. This is what equanimity looks like in practice. The ability to pause, to take a step back, and to respond with clarity rather than reacting with emotion. It doesn't mean we don't feel anger or frustration. It simply means we don't let those emotions control our actions. Equanimity is also closely tied to the practice of non-attachment. In Zen Buddhism, attachment is seen as a source of suffering. When we become attached to outcomes, people, possessions, or experiences, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Everything is impermanent, and when we cling to something that is bound to change, we create suffering for ourselves. Equanimity, easy, on the other hand, is the ability to let go of attachment and remain steady in the face of change. This doesn't mean we stop caring about the things we value. It means we learn to appreciate them without becoming overly dependent on them for our happiness. When we become too attached to something, we place all our hopes and expectations on it. And when it inevitably changes or disappears, we are left feeling lost and devastated. But when we approach life with equanimity, we can appreciate each moment for what it is, knowing that nothing is permanent and that change is an inevitable part of the human experience. A beautiful Zen story illustrates this point. It is about a monk who lived in a small temple high in the mountains. Every day, he would go down to the village to beg for alms. One day, as he was walking back up the mountain, a heavy rainstorm struck. The monk found shelter in a small cave and sat there, waiting for the storm to pass. As he sat in the cave, he noticed a small, delicate flower growing at the mouth of the cave. Despite the harsh conditions, the flower seemed to be thriving, standing tall amidst the storm. The monk admired the flower for its resilience, but as the rain continued to pour down, he noticed that the flower began to droop, its petals weighed down by the heavy rain. The monk sat there for a long time, watching the flower, and eventually, the rain stopped, the sun came out, and the flower lifted its head once more. Basking in the warmth of the sun, the monk smiled, recognizing the lesson in the flower's ability to bend without breaking. It wasn't the flower's resistance to the storm that allowed it to survive. It was its ability to flow with the changes, to bend and adapt to the shifting conditions. This is the essence of equanimity. Like the flower, we must learn to bend with the winds of life rather than resisting them. When we resist change, we create suffering. But when we learn to flow with it, we find the strength to endure. Just like the flower, equanimity also helps us develop a deeper sense of compassion. When we are able to remain calm and balanced in the face of our own struggles, we are better able to offer compassion to others who are going through their own challenges. When we are not consumed by our own emotions, we can be present for others without judgment or attachment. We can listen with an open heart and offer support without trying to fix or change them. This is one of the greatest gifts of Zen practice, the ability to cultivate a calm and compassionate presence, both for ourselves and for others. In a world that is often filled with chaos and turbulence, equanimity allows us to be a steady force of peace and understanding. One final point to consider: equanimity is not something that happens overnight. It is a practice that requires patience, perseverance, and a willingness to face the challenges that arise with openness and acceptance. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the storms of life, but when we approach them with equanimity, we can find a sense of calm amidst the chaos. As you continue on this journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, I invite you to practice equanimity in your daily life. When challenges arise, take a deep breath and remember to pause before reacting. Observe your emotions without judgment and let go of attachment to specific outcomes. In doing so, you will begin to develop the strength to face life's ups and downs with grace and resilience. Equanimity is not about becoming indifferent to life. It's about becoming more fully present for it, without getting caught in the emotional whirlwinds that often cloud our judgment. By practicing equanimity, we can cultivate a mind that remains steady, clear, and unshaken, no matter what life throws our way. As we deepen our exploration of the Zen practice of cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now turn to a concept that is often overlooked but incredibly important: the power of presence. In Zen, the idea of being fully present in each moment is central to achieving clarity and peace. But what does it truly mean to be present? And how can we cultivate this quality in our daily lives? This practice is not just about focusing on the here and now. It's about learning to deeply experience and engage with every moment as it unfolds. Most of us spend our lives either living in the past or worrying about the future. We dwell on past mistakes, relive old memories, or obsess over things that went wrong. At the same time, we are constantly planning, thinking, and worrying about what lies ahead. This constant mental chatter keeps us disconnected from the present moment, causing us to miss the richness and beauty of life as it is. The Zen masters, however, teach that the present moment is the only time we truly have. The past is gone, and the future is uncertain. The present moment is where life unfolds, where true peace can be found, and where clarity and understanding arise. By learning to be fully present, we unlock the power to truly experience life, free from the distractions of our past regrets and future anxieties. One of the most profound ways to practice being present is through mindfulness meditation. When we meditate, we focus all of our attention on the present moment, on our breath, on the sensations in our body, or on the sounds around us. We let go of all distractions and allow ourselves to simply be. This practice trains the mind to stay in the moment, helping us break free from the endless cycle of past and future thoughts. I remember when I first began practicing mindfulness meditation, I struggled immensely to quiet my mind. Every time I tried to focus on my breath, my mind would race off to the past, reliving old regrets, or jump to the future, worrying about what might happen next. It felt like an endless loop of thoughts that I couldn't escape. But through consistent practice, I began to notice a shift. Slowly, I learned to bring my attention back to the present moment each time my mind wandered. I stopped trying to control my thoughts and instead allowed them to come and go without judgment. Over time, I began to notice that this practice was not just something I did during meditation. It started to carry over into my daily life. I found myself being more present in conversations, in my work, And even in the small, everyday moments, I began to appreciate the little things, the warmth of the sun on my face, the sound of birds chirping, the simple pleasure of a cup of tea. These moments, which at once passed by unnoticed, became deeply meaningful to me. One powerful Zen story illustrates the importance of presence. It is about a monk who was walking through the forest when he encountered a young man who was desperately searching for something. The young man was frantic, looking in every direction, and he asked the monk, "Have you seen my lost treasure?" The monk looked at him calmly and said, "What treasure are you looking for?" The young man replied, "It is a precious jewel, a symbol of my great fortune. I have searched everywhere, but I cannot find it." The monk then asked, "Why are you searching for it so desperately? What is so special about this jewel?" The young man paused for a moment and said, "It represents everything I want in life: wealth, success, and happiness. Without it, I feel lost." The monk smiled and pointed to the ground beneath their feet. "Look here," he said. "The treasure you seek is already here, beneath your very feet. It is the present moment, the here and now. It is all you need." The young man, bewildered, looked down and saw nothing. But as he stood there, slowly, he began to understand. The monk's words were simple, but they contained the profound truth that the present moment is the true treasure. It is in the present that we find our peace, our happiness, and our connection to life itself. This story reflects the Zen teaching that we are constantly searching for something outside ourselves, whether it's success, possessions, or a sense of purpose. But in truth, everything we seek is already within us. The present moment, when fully experienced, is the greatest treasure we can find. It is where life truly happens, and it is all we need to feel complete. To be present is to be fully alive. It is to engage with the world around us without distraction or judgment. It is to listen deeply to those we love, to savor the food we eat, to appreciate the beauty of nature, and to experience the richness of each moment. This is what Zen practice teaches us: to stop chasing after things that are always just beyond our reach, and to start embracing the here and now. Another aspect of presence is learning to be with discomfort. In our fast-paced world, we are constantly seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. We rush through life, trying to avoid discomfort in every form. But in Zen, we are taught that discomfort is an inevitable part of life, and it can actually be a powerful tool for personal growth. When we learn to be present with discomfort, we no longer try to escape from it. Instead, we allow ourselves to feel it fully. We notice the sensations in our body, the emotions that arise, and the thoughts that accompany them. By observing discomfort with mindfulness, we can reduce its power over us. We stop identifying with it, and instead, we allow it to pass naturally, just like any other thought or feeling. Through this practice, we develop a deeper sense of resilience. We no longer need to avoid discomfort or pain. We learn to face it with acceptance, understanding that it is temporary and part of the human experience. When we stop running from discomfort, we free ourselves to live more fully and to engage with life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. The ability to be present with discomfort is also essential for developing compassion. When we learn to be present with our own pain, we are better able to be present with the pain of others. We understand that suffering is a part of life, and rather than trying to fix it, we offer our presence as a source of comfort and support. This is the essence of compassion in Zen practice, being fully present without trying to change or fix, but simply offering a compassionate and mindful presence. As you continue your journey toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, I encourage you to practice being present in each moment, whether it's in meditation, in your relationships, or in your everyday activities. Take the time to fully experience the present moment. Let go of the distractions of the past and future, and focus on what is happening right now. You'll find that, in doing so, you unlock a treasure that was always there: the beauty, peace, and fulfillment of the present moment. As we continue our journey toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, we arrive at an essential quality that plays a significant role in Zen practice: the cultivation of wisdom through direct experience. Wisdom in Zen is not something that is acquired through books or intellectual study, but through direct engagement with life. The kind of wisdom that is lived and felt in the body, mind, and heart. In many spiritual traditions, wisdom is often seen as something that you must search for, something that is outside of yourself, waiting to be discovered. But Zen teaches us that wisdom is already present in our experience. It is not something we need to go looking for. Rather, it is something we need to recognize and uncover within ourselves. The path to wisdom is not about accumulating knowledge, but about deepening our connection to life itself and being present with it as it unfolds. This direct wisdom comes through practice. It is the kind of wisdom that arises from sitting with the discomfort of our emotions, the difficulty of our challenges, and the complexity of our thoughts. It's not the knowledge that can be explained in a book, but the kind of wisdom that becomes apparent when we stop running from life's messiness and learn to embrace it fully. Let me share a Zen story that illustrates the power of wisdom that arises from direct experience. A young monk came to his teacher and asked, "Master, how can I find wisdom?" The teacher, who was sitting in silence, did not answer right away. Instead, he continued with his work sweeping the temple floor. The young monk repeated his question, this time more insistently. "Master, please tell me, how can I find wisdom?" The teacher paused, looked up, and said, "When you are sweeping the floor, sweep the floor. When you are walking, walk. When you are eating, eat." The young monk was confused. "But Master, how does sweeping the floor or walking or eating bring wisdom?" The teacher smiled gently. "Wisdom is not something to be found in distant places. It is right here, in the act of living. When you stop rushing through life, when you stop searching for something outside yourself, you will realize that wisdom is present in everything. It is in the simplicity of each moment, in each breath, and in each action." The young monk, though still unsure, took the teacher's words to heart. He began to pay closer attention to his actions. When he swept the floor, he didn't think about the future or the past. He simply swept. When he ate, he focused on the sensation of the food, the warmth of the bowl, the texture of the rice, and the sounds around him. Slowly, he began to understand wisdom wasn't something he could grasp with his mind. It was something he could experience with his whole being. This is the essence of Zen wisdom. The realization that wisdom is not a distant goal, but a way of being. It is found in the simplicity of everyday life, in the moments we often overlook, when we stop trying to seek it externally and instead turn our attention inward. We can experience the profound wisdom that is always available to us. As we engage with life more fully, we begin to see things as they truly are without the filter of our judgments, expectations, or assumptions. We begin to notice the impermanence of all things, the interconnectedness of life, and the profound beauty of each moment. This direct experience of life is what Zen calls beginner's mind, a state of openness and curiosity where we approach the world with fresh eyes, as if seeing everything for the first time. In this state of beginner's mind, we let go of the need to have everything figured out. We don't need to have all the answers, and we don't need to be in control. Instead, we simply engage with life as it is, without attachment to the outcome or fear of the unknown. This mindset is key to developing an unbreakable mind, one that is not rigid or defensive, but open and flexible, ready to learn from whatever comes its way. I can recall a time in my life when I was caught up in striving for success. I believed that achieving certain goals will bring me happiness. But no matter how much I accomplished, I always felt as though something was missing. It wasn't until I embraced the wisdom of living in the present, letting go of the constant need to strive and achieve, that I began to feel a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. The key to this transformation was learning to trust in the process of life. Instead of chasing after goals, I began to focus on the present moment, on what was happening right in front of me. I realized that wisdom didn't lie in the destination, but in the journey itself. By fully experiencing each step, each moment, I began to tap into a deep well of wisdom that had always been there, waiting for me to notice. This wisdom comes not through effort or striving, but through allowing ourselves to be fully present in our experiences, free from the need to control or manipulate them. It is a wisdom that arises from surrender, from letting go of the desire to impose our will on life, and instead learning to move with the flow of the universe. Zen practice teaches us that the way to wisdom is not through intellectual understanding, but through direct experience. It's not about what we know, but about how we live and engage with the world around us. The wisdom of Zen is born in the simple acts of living, sweeping the floor, walking, eating, and breathing. When we stop seeking wisdom outside ourselves and instead turn our attention to the present moment, we begin to experience the world in a whole new way. We begin to see the inherent beauty in everything around us, from the most mundane tasks to the most profound moments. This is the wisdom that Zen offers us, a wisdom that brings peace, clarity, and an unshakable mind. As you continue on your journey, I encourage you to embrace this direct wisdom. Let go of the need to seek or chase after answers. Instead, turn your attention to the present moment. Practice mindfulness in the simplest of activities, sweeping. walking, eating, and allow wisdom to arise naturally from your experience. When you live this way, you will find that the wisdom you seek has always been with you, waiting to be discovered. As we continue to explore the teachings of Zen and the path toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now turn to a practice that is essential for our mental and emotional well-being: the cultivation of compassion. Compassion in Zen practice is not just an abstract concept, it is a living, breathing practice that permeates every aspect of our daily life. It is the capacity to respond to the suffering of others with kindness and care, and to offer support without judgment or expectation. In the West, we often think of compassion as a feeling or an emotional response to someone else's pain. But in Zen, compassion is not just a feeling, it is a way of being. It is an active, deliberate practice that we can cultivate through our thoughts, words, and actions. Compassion is about seeing others with clarity, understanding their suffering, and offering them our presence and support. One of the most profound teachings in Zen is that compassion begins with ourselves. Before we can extend compassion to others, we must first learn to be compassionate toward ourselves. This means accepting our own flaws, embracing our imperfections, and offering ourselves the same care and kindness that we would offer a dear friend. In my own journey, I discovered that self-compassion was the foundation of all other forms of compassion. I had spent so much of my life trying to be perfect, striving for an ideal that didn't exist. But when I began to practice self-compassion, I realized that I didn't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and kindness. I could be human, with all my flaws and mistakes, and still be deserving of compassion. In Zen practice, self-compassion is not about indulgence or letting ourselves off the hook for our mistakes. It's about being gentle with ourselves, recognizing that we are all imperfect, and offering ourselves the grace to learn and grow. Self-compassion means treating ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer to a friend who is struggling. A Zen story offers a powerful illustration of this concept. It is about a young monk who was struggling with self-doubt. He had been practicing diligently for many years, but he still felt as though he was not making progress. He went to his teacher and said, "Master, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been meditating every day, but I still feel lost and uncertain. I can't seem to get past my doubts." The teacher, without saying a word, took the young monk to a nearby garden. There, they saw a beautiful flower blooming. The teacher pointed to the flower and said, "Do you see this flower? It doesn't strive to bloom. It simply grows, following the natural flow of life. It doesn't judge itself for being imperfect, nor does it compare itself to other flowers. It simply is." The young monk looked at the flower and understood. The flower's beauty came not from its perfection, but from its willingness to simply exist as it was, without striving or judgment. Similarly, the monk realized that his journey was not about reaching some idealized version of himself, but about accepting himself as he was, with all his imperfections, and allowing himself to grow at his own pace. This story reflects the essence of self-compassion. When we stop judging ourselves for our flaws and stop trying to be something we're not, we create space for growth and healing. we become like the flower, allowing ourselves to bloom naturally without striving for perfection. But compassion does not stop with ourselves. Once we cultivate self-compassion, we are able to extend that same care and kindness to others. In Zen practice, compassion is expressed through actions, not just words. It's about being fully present for others, offering them our time, our attention, and our support without expectation. Compassion is about showing up for others in their suffering, even when we don't have all the answers. One Zen master said, "The true practice of compassion is not to fix the suffering of others, but to be with them in their suffering, to sit with them, to offer them your presence, and to listen with an open heart." This teaching underscores the importance of simply being there for others, offering our presence as a source of comfort and support. In my own life, I have found that some of the most powerful acts of compassion have been the simplest ones. Sometimes, just sitting with someone in silence, offering a listening ear, or giving them a comforting word is enough. We don't always need to fix someone's problems or offer solutions. Often, the greatest gift we can give is our presence and our willingness to be with them in their pain. This is especially important in today's world, where many people are struggling with feelings of isolation and loneliness. In the age of technology, we are more connected than ever before, yet many of us feel disconnected from each other. The practice of compassion offers a remedy for this disconnection. It encourages us to reach out to others, to offer our time and energy, and to be present in ways that truly matter. There is a Zen practice called Tonglen, which is the practice of breathing in the suffering of others and breathing out love and compassion. In this practice, we visualize the suffering of others, and with each breath, we draw that suffering into ourselves. We then breathe out compassion and healing, offering it back to the world. This practice helps us cultivate an open heart and a deep sense of empathy for others, and it reminds us that we are all connected in our shared experience of suffering. Through compassion, we not only help others, but we also help ourselves. When we extend compassion to others, we open our hearts and minds to the world. We break down the barriers that separate us from each other and from ourselves. Compassion helps us to see the interconnectedness of all beings and to understand that in offering love and care to others, we are also nurturing our own souls. In Zen, we learn that compassion is not an optional practice. It is essential for our spiritual growth. Compassion allows us to live with an open heart, to be present with others in their suffering, and to offer them the support they need. When we practice compassion, we begin to embody the wisdom and clarity of Zen, and we cultivate an unbreakable mind that is rooted in love, kindness, and understanding. As you continue on your journey, I encourage you to practice compassion, both for yourself and for others. When you experience difficulty or pain, offer yourself the same kindness and care that you would offer to a friend. And when you encounter others who are suffering, offer them your presence, your compassion, and your heart. In doing so, you will find that compassion is not just a gift you give to others, it is also a gift you give to yourself. In the continued journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now turn to another profound Zen practice, the power of acceptance. Acceptance is a cornerstone of Zen teachings, and it plays a vital role in developing resilience, inner peace, and wisdom. At its core, acceptance is about recognizing reality as it is, without resistance or judgment. It is about seeing the world, ourselves, and others as they truly are: imperfect, fleeting, and constantly changing, and learning to embrace this reality rather than fight against it. The word acceptance often carries a heavy connotation in our culture. We tend to think of it as something passive or resigned, as if we are giving up or surrendering to something we do not like. However, in Zen, acceptance is a dynamic, active practice. It is not about passivity, but about engaging with life fully, with openness and clarity. Acceptance is about seeing things clearly and responding to them with wisdom, rather than reacting from a place of fear, frustration, or anger. One of the most powerful Zen teachings on acceptance is the idea of non-resistance. This is the practice of not fighting against what is happening, but instead allowing things to unfold as they will. In a world that constantly urges us to control, fix, or change everything around us, this teaching may seem counterintuitive, but it is precisely by letting go of our need to control that we find true peace and resilience. The Zen masters often use the metaphor of water to describe non-resistance. Water flows freely, adapting to the shape of whatever container it finds itself in. It doesn't resist obstacles or try to push against them. Instead, it moves around them, finding the path of least resistance. Water is powerful, not because it forces its way, but because it moves with the flow of life. This is the essence of acceptance in Zen, the ability to go with the flow of life, to adapt to whatever comes your way without clinging to expectations or resisting reality. The great Zen master Dogen once said, "When you are content with the present moment, you have found the path of enlightenment." This teaching speaks to the heart of acceptance. When we learn to accept the present moment as it is, without judgment or desire for it to be different, we find peace. We stop fighting against life's challenges, and instead, we meet them with open hearts and minds. I remember a time when I was going through a particularly challenging period in my life. It felt as though everything was falling apart. My work was demanding, my personal life was in turmoil, and I felt overwhelmed by everything that was happening. I found myself resisting the situation, wishing things were different, wishing I could control the outcome. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't change the circumstances. The more I resisted, the more I felt trapped in my own frustration. It was at this point that I turned to Zen teachings on acceptance. I realized that my resistance to what was happening was causing me more suffering than the situation itself. I began to practice accepting the moment as it was. Without trying to change it, I acknowledged my feelings of frustration, but I didn't let them control me. I stopped wishing things were different and started accepting the reality of the situation as it was. This shift in perspective changed everything. When I let go of my resistance, I found that the situation became more manageable. I could respond to it with clarity and wisdom, rather than reacting from a place of stress or frustration. By accepting what was happening, I found the space to act with intention and purpose, rather than being swept away by my emotions. Acceptance is also deeply connected to the practice of mindfulness. When we are mindful, we are fully present with whatever is happening without trying to change or fix it. We allow ourselves to feel whatever we are feeling, to experience whatever we are experiencing without judgment. We stop labeling things as good or bad, and instead, we simply observe them as they are. In this space of non-judgment, we find freedom. Zen practice teaches us that we do not need to control or manipulate life in order to find peace. Peace comes from accepting life as it is, with all its imperfections, challenges, and uncertainties. When we resist life, we create suffering. But when we accept life, we find that it is much easier to navigate. We stop fighting against the current, and instead, we learn to flow with it. A beautiful Zen story illustrates this teaching. It is about a monk who had been practicing for many years, striving to attain enlightenment. One day, he asked his teacher, "Master, how can I achieve enlightenment? What must I do to become free?" The teacher smiled and said, "You are already free. You just need to realize it." The monk was puzzled. "But Master, I have been practicing for so long. I have studied all the teachings. I have meditated for hours. How can I already be free?" The teacher replied, "You are like a person who is standing in front of a door and wondering how to enter. The door is already open. You simply need to step through." The monk understood. The path to enlightenment was not about achieving something outside of himself, but about recognizing the freedom that was already there. It was about accepting himself as he was, without striving or reaching for something beyond his grasp. This story speaks to the heart of acceptance. When we stop chasing after external goals, when we stop fighting against what is, we begin to realize that peace and freedom are already within us. We don't need to change ourselves or our circumstances. We simply need to accept life as it is, to see it clearly, and to respond with wisdom and compassion. Acceptance is not about giving up or resigning ourselves to a life of suffering. It is about engaging with life fully as it is, without resistance or denial. It is about meeting each moment with an open heart and mind, embracing the imperfections, the challenges, and the beauty of the world around us. As you continue on your journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, I invite you to practice acceptance in your daily life. When you encounter difficulty, when you face obstacles, take a moment to step back and accept the situation as it is. Let go of the need to control or change it, and instead, allow yourself to be present with it. In doing so, you will find that life becomes much more manageable and peace arises naturally from within. Acceptance is not a passive act. It is an active choice to engage with life as it is, with openness and clarity. When you embrace this practice, you will find that your mind becomes more unshakable, more resilient, and more at peace with the world around you. In our continuing exploration of cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now turn to one of the most vital aspects of Zen practice, cultivating patience. Patience is not merely the act of waiting calmly for something to happen. It is a profound quality that encompasses endurance, tolerance, and the ability to remain grounded in the present moment without becoming frustrated or upset by life's inevitable delays, setbacks, or challenges. in a world where we are constantly rushing, whether it's to meet deadlines, to achieve goals, or to get to the next stage in our personal lives. Patience seems like a rare commodity. We live in an age of instant gratification, where everything is just a click away, and the expectation of immediate results is ingrained in our daily lives. However, Zen teaches us that true peace and resilience come not from speeding through life, but from learning to wait, to be patient, and to trust the process. Patience is deeply connected to the Zen principle of beginner's mind, which is the practice of approaching life with openness, curiosity, and a sense of wonder. When we cultivate patience, we are not simply tolerating the waiting period, but we are embracing it with full awareness, knowing that there is wisdom in every moment, even those that seem to stretch endlessly. One of the core teachings of Zen Buddhism is the idea that everything happens in its own time. This teaching helps us to develop a deep sense of patience, especially in the face of difficulties. Just as the seasons change in their own time, just as a flower blooms when it is ready, so too does the path of our personal growth unfold in its own time. One Zen story that beautifully illustrates the power of patience involves a young monk who approached his teacher filled with frustration. The monk had been meditating for many months and was desperate for insight, for a moment of clarity, something that would make his practice meaningful. He approached the teacher with his usual plea, "Master, I have been practicing diligently, but I feel as though I am not getting any closer to enlightenment. How long must I wait before I will experience the peace and wisdom that you speak of?" The teacher looked at him calmly and said, "Do not ask how long. You must simply practice. Do not be attached to when or how you will experience enlightenment. It will come when the time is right." The young monk, still frustrated, spent the next few days reflecting on the teacher's words. He realized that his impatience, his constant striving for results, was what was preventing him from truly experiencing the peace that came with practice. He was too focused on the end goal, rather than appreciating the present moment, which was where the wisdom lay. He continued his practice with a new understanding, free from the need for instant results, and eventually he discovered that peace and insight had been with him all along. This story beautifully captures the essence of Zen patience, the ability to surrender the need for immediate results and to trust that things will unfold when they are meant to. True patience comes from acceptance and understanding that we are all on our own unique path. We don't need to compare our journey to others, nor do we need to rush through life to reach some predefined destination. Patience in Zen practice is also about learning to be with discomfort. In our culture, we often view discomfort, whether it's physical pain, emotional distress, or the waiting process, as something to be avoided at all costs. But Zen teaches us that discomfort is an inevitable part of life, and it holds valuable lessons for us. Patience is not about running away from discomfort. It is about learning to sit with it, to accept it, and to allow it to pass naturally, just like the clouds passing through the sky. When we practice patience, we learn that everything has its own time. Whether it's a personal challenge, a difficult emotion, or a period of waiting for something we desire, Patience teaches us to trust that things are unfolding in their own way, even if we cannot see the end result immediately. It encourages us to slow down, to be present, and to embrace life's rhythms without the urgency that so often leads to unnecessary stress. Another Zen story teaches us about the value of patience in times of suffering. It is about a farmer who lived in a small village. One year, a terrible drought struck the region and the crops began to wither. The farmer's fields, once full of life, were now barren, and his neighbors were frantic, wondering how they would survive the coming months. The farmer, however, did not panic. He simply continued to water his crops every day, even though he saw little progress. His neighbors asked him why he was still working so hard when it seemed hopeless. The farmer replied, "Patience. In time, the rains will come and the crops will grow again. But for now, I continue to water them, knowing that what I am doing is necessary, even if I do not see immediate results." Sure enough, after many weeks, the rains finally arrived, and the crops began to thrive once more. The farmer's patience and dedication had paid off. His willingness to continue, despite the apparent lack of results, had seen him through the hardship, and he was rewarded in time. This story teaches us that patience is not about waiting passively for things to change. It is about continuing to show up, continuing to do the work. Even when we cannot see the outcome, life often requires us to trust that our efforts are not in vain, even when the results are not immediately visible. True patience is about trusting the process and understanding that the seeds we plant today may not bear fruit until tomorrow or even far beyond that. Patience also teaches us to embrace the present moment, rather than always looking ahead to the future. So often, we become consumed with the idea of what's next. The next promotion, the next relationship, the next achievement. But when we are always focused on the future, we miss the beauty and wisdom of the present moment. Zen practice encourages us to be fully present, to appreciate where we are right now, even if it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. Patience is about learning to be at peace with the present, knowing that everything unfolds in its own time. It is about trusting that the universe has its own rhythm and that we are an essential part of that flow, even if we cannot always see where it is taking us. As you continue on the path toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, I invite you to practice patience in your life. Whether you are facing a challenging situation or simply waiting for something to unfold, take a deep breath and trust the process. Allow yourself to be present with whatever is happening right now, without rushing or forcing the outcome. Patience will help you to navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience, and it will allow you to experience the peace that comes from trusting in the flow of life. As we continue to explore the practices that cultivate an unbreakable mind, we come to another foundational aspect of Zen, the power of detachment. Detachment is often misunderstood in modern society. We tend to think of detachment as a form of emotional coldness or indifference. In Zen, however, detachment is not about distancing ourselves from others or becoming numb to the world. It is about releasing our attachment to the outcomes, possessions, and identities that we cling to. and embracing life with openness and flexibility. Detachment is one of the core teachings of the Buddha, and it is deeply intertwined with the practice of letting go. In Zen, we learn that the more we cling to things, whether they are physical possessions, relationships, or even our own identity, the more we suffer. This is because attachment is based on the illusion that things are permanent and fixed. When we attach ourselves to something, we believe that it will always be there, that it will provide us with happiness or security. But as we've learned throughout this journey, everything in life is impermanent. The things we hold on to will inevitably change, decay, or be taken away. This truth about impermanence is one of the key reasons why detachment is so important. When we learn to detach from the need to control or possess, we free ourselves from the fear of losing what we cling to. We stop defining ourselves by what we own, by the people in our lives, or by the roles we play. Instead, we learn to embrace life as it is, with all its uncertainties, knowing that everything we experience is transient and will eventually pass. Zen teachings often use the metaphor of a leaf floating on a river to explain the concept of detachment. The leaf does not cling to the river or resist its current. It simply floats along, allowing the flow of water to carry it. Similarly, when we practice detachment, we learn to let go of our need to control life circumstances. We stop trying to hold on to the past or predict the future, and instead, we allow ourselves to flow with the natural rhythm of life, trusting that we will be carried where we need to go. One Zen story beautifully illustrates the power of detachment. It is about a monk who lived in a small, peaceful temple by the mountains. One day, the temple was visited by a wealthy merchant who offered the monk a large sum of money in exchange for a blessing. The monk, who had lived a life of simplicity, told the merchant, "I do not need your money. I have everything I need right here in this moment." The merchant, puzzled by the monk's response, asked, "But why would you refuse such a generous gift? Don't you need wealth? Don't you want a better life?" The monk replied, "Wealth is fleeting. Happiness is not found in possessions, but in peace. I have already found that peace." The merchant, still not understanding, left the temple, and as he did, he stumbled and fell into a pit. The monk, seeing this, went to help him, but the merchant refused, insisting that the monk's teachings had already shown him the true wealth of life, peace and detachment. The monk smiled and said, "You have learned the lesson. True wealth is not what you can hold in your hands, but what you carry within you. When you release your attachments, you discover that you are already rich." This story illustrates that detachment is not about renouncing all material things or withdrawing from the world. It is about realizing that our true wealth lies not in what we own, but in our ability to remain free from attachment. When we detach from the need to control life, we open ourselves up to the beauty and the peace that exists in the present moment. This is not to say that we should abandon our responsibilities or our relationships. Detachment does not mean rejecting the world. It means engaging with it fully, without becoming overly attached to outcomes. When we are detached, we can give ourselves wholeheartedly to the things that matter to us, but we do so without clinging to them. We love, we work, We care, but we do so without the fear of losing what we hold dear. A crucial aspect of Zen detachment is the understanding that our thoughts and emotions are not who we are. We often define ourselves by our thoughts, the stories we tell ourselves, and the labels we attach to our identities. But Zen teaches us that these thoughts are not our true selves. They are temporary and ever-changing. When we practice detachment, we stop identifying with these fleeting thoughts and start to recognize that we are the awareness behind them. We are the observer, not the observed. This understanding is liberating. When we realize that we are not defined by our thoughts, emotions, or possessions, we gain the freedom to be fully present in each moment. We no longer need to control or manipulate our circumstances to feel secure. We can simply be, trusting that everything we need is already within us. A Zen master once said, "When you are free from attachment, you are free from suffering." This is the core of Zen detachment. When we let go of our attachment to outcomes, identities, and possessions, we free ourselves from the suffering that comes with clinging. We learn to flow with life, to accept each moment as it is, and to find peace in the midst of uncertainty. In our daily lives, we can practice detachment in small ways. When we feel ourselves becoming overly attached to something, whether it's a particular outcome, a material possession, or even an identity, take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what would happen if I let go of this attachment? Can I find peace without it? Over time, this practice of detachment will allow you to develop a deeper sense of freedom and inner peace. You will no longer be bound by the need to control everything around you. You will be able to let go of your attachments and live more fully in the present with a sense of openness and acceptance. As you continue your journey toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, I invite you to practice detachment. Let go of the things that weigh you down, the identities you cling to, and the fear of losing what you hold dear. Embrace life as it is, with all its uncertainties, knowing that true peace comes from within, not from external circumstances. Detachment is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about engaging with the world freely, without clinging. When you practice detachment, you will find that life becomes lighter, more fluid, and full of peace. As we continue on the path of cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now explore a crucial practice in Zen, the art of surrender. The concept of surrender in Zen is not about giving up or resigning ourselves to helplessness. Instead, it is the practice of letting go of our rigid need for control and allowing ourselves to align with the flow of life. Surrender is about trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to, even when we do not understand why or how. In our modern world, we are taught to control every aspect of our lives. We are taught that if we work hard enough, plan meticulously enough, and make the right choices, we can shape our futures exactly as we desire. But Zen teaches us that no matter how hard we try, we cannot control everything. Life is unpredictable, and there will always be forces beyond our control. Surrendering to this reality is not about weakness or giving in. It is about recognizing the limitations of our control and learning to embrace life with trust rather than fear. One Zen story that beautifully illustrates the power of surrender involves a famous Zen master who was asked by a student, "Master, what is the key to living a peaceful life?" The master responded by leading the student to a large tree outside the temple. The master stood before the tree and asked, "What do you see?" The student looked up at the tree and replied, "I see the tree's leaves, its branches, and its trunk." The master nodded and said, "Yes, but what is the most important thing about this tree?" The student, puzzled, replied, "Its roots." The master smiled and said, "No, the most important thing about this tree is its ability to surrender. The tree does not resist the wind, the rain, or the changing seasons. It simply lets go of its leaves when the time comes and embraces whatever life brings. It surrenders to the natural flow of existence, and in doing so, it remains rooted in its truth." The student stood quietly for a moment, taking in the master's words. He realized that the tree's strength came not from resisting life's challenges, but from surrendering to the flow of the seasons, adapting to whatever came its way. The tree did not fight against the wind, it bent with it. It did not hold on to its leaves when it was time for them to fall. It let go. This was the power of surrender. This story teaches us a profound lesson. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means aligning with the flow of life. It means trusting that we don't need to control everything in order to find peace. Life will unfold in its own time, and our task is not to fight against it, but to surrender to its natural rhythm. Surrendering does not mean that we stop acting or engaging with the world. It means that we stop forcing our way through life. Instead of trying to impose our will on every situation, we learn to meet life where it is, to respond with openness and acceptance, and to trust that everything is unfolding as it should. This is the essence of Zen surrender. A powerful aspect of surrender in Zen practice is the recognition that we do not know everything. We do not have all the answers. We often try to control life because we believe that if we understand every detail, we will feel safe and secure. But the truth is that we cannot understand everything, and that is okay. When we surrender, we let go of the need to understand every aspect of life and accept that there will always be mystery. We learn to trust that the universe has its own wisdom and that we are part of that wisdom. One Zen master once said, "We do not need to know all the answers. We only need to trust that life will reveal what we need when we need it." This is the beauty of surrender. We do not have to have everything figured out. We do not need to control our destiny. Instead, we can trust in the flow of life and let go of our attachment to outcomes. I can remember a time in my life when I was struggling with a difficult decision. I felt as though I was at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. The more I thought about it, the more overwhelmed I became. I tried to analyze every possible outcome, weighing the pros and cons, trying to control the situation and find the right answer. But the more I tried, the more uncertain I became. It wasn't until I decided to surrender, to let go of the need to control, and simply trust the process, that the clarity I sought began to emerge. By letting go of my attachment to the outcome, I allowed space for the answer to come naturally. I realized that I didn't need to have everything figured out. All I needed to do was trust that life would unfold as it should, and that Whatever decision I made will be part of my journey. Surrender is not a passive act. It is an active choice to let go of our need to control and trust that life will guide us. It is about surrendering to the present moment, releasing our attachment to the past, and embracing the unknown. When we surrender, we stop resisting life, and in doing so, we find peace. Zen practice teaches us that the more we surrender, the more we are able to be present in each moment. We stop worrying about what will happen in the future or regretting what happened in the past. Instead, we become fully immersed in the present, embracing whatever arises with an open heart and mind. This is the true freedom that comes with surrender. As you continue on your journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, I encourage you to practice surrender in your own life. Let go of the need to control every outcome. Trust that life will unfold as it is meant to, and allow yourself to be guided by the natural rhythm of existence. Embrace uncertainty and allow yourself to be fully present in each moment, knowing that surrender is the key to true peace. Surrender is not about weakness, it is about strength. It is the strength to let go of the need to control and trust in the wisdom of life. When we surrender, we align ourselves with the flow of the universe, and in doing so, we find an unshakable peace that cannot be disturbed by external circumstances. As we continue on this journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now turn to one of the most important practices in Zen, the cultivation of gratitude. Gratitude is not just a simple feeling or a response to receiving something. It is a deep practice that transforms the way we see the world. In Zen, gratitude is seen as a powerful tool for shifting our perception and developing a mind that remains open, positive, and resilient, no matter the circumstances. In the modern world, we are often conditioned to focus on what is missing or what we don't have. We are taught to strive for more success, more possessions, more recognition, and in doing so, we often overlook the abundance that already exists in our lives. Gratitude is the practice of shifting our attention from what we lack to what we already have, recognizing the richness and beauty that is present in every moment. Zen teachings on gratitude emphasize that it is not simply about acknowledging the positive aspects of life, but about cultivating a deep sense of appreciation for the entirety of our experience, the good and the bad, the joyful and the painful. This practice helps us to see life with a new perspective, recognizing that even our struggles and challenges can be opportunities for growth and transformation. One Zen story that beautifully illustrates the power of gratitude involves a monk who went to his teacher feeling dissatisfied with his life. The monk said, "Master, I have been practicing diligently, but I still feel empty. I feel as though something is missing in my life. I don't understand why I can't find true peace and happiness." The teacher looked at the monk and asked, "What are you grateful for?" The monk thought for a moment, but could not come up with an answer. "I don't know," he said. "I am grateful for my practice, but there is still something I am missing." The teacher smiled and said, "Gratitude is not about seeking something outside yourself. It is about recognizing what you already have. Every moment, every breath, every step you take is a gift. Gratitude comes from realizing that life itself is a miracle. The monk left the teacher's presence, and as he walked back to his temple, he began to notice the world around him in a new way. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the trees were swaying in the wind. He realized that he had been so focused on what he didn't have that he had overlooked the simple beauty of life. With a newfound sense of gratitude, he returned to his practice, no longer seeking happiness in external circumstances, but finding it in the very act of living. This story teaches us that gratitude is not just about counting our blessings, but about cultivating a deep sense of appreciation for the present moment. It is about seeing life, with all its ups and downs, as a gift. When we practice gratitude, we begin to see everything as sacred, even the ordinary, everyday moments that we often take for granted. Zen teaches us that everything we experience is interconnected and that every moment holds the potential for gratitude. When we wake up in the morning, we can be grateful for the new day. When we eat a meal, we can be grateful for the nourishment. When we experience pain or difficulty, we can be grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow. Gratitude transforms our perception of the world, allowing us to see beauty and value in every experience. No matter how small, a powerful Zen practice related to gratitude is the practice of giving thanks during meditation. In this practice, we pause during our meditation to silently express gratitude for the things in our lives, our health, our loved ones, the food we eat, the shelter we have, and the very breath that sustains us. This practice of giving thanks shifts our focus from what is lacking to what is abundant, helping us to cultivate a deep sense of contentment and peace. When we begin our meditation practice with gratitude, we lay the foundation for a calm, open, and receptive mind. Gratitude helps us to let go of the mental clutter and distractions that often arise during meditation, allowing us to center ourselves in the present moment. By bringing gratitude into our practice, we deepen our connection to the world around us and cultivate a sense of peace that arises naturally. In my own life, I've found that practicing gratitude has been one of the most transformative aspects of my spiritual journey. There was a time when I was so focused on what I didn't have, on what I was still striving for, that I overlooked the many gifts I already had. It wasn't until I began to consciously practice gratitude that I began to feel a sense of peace and fulfillment that I had been searching for all along. One simple practice I adopted was to write down 3 things I was grateful for each day. These didn't have to be big things. Sometimes it was simply being grateful for a warm cup of tea or for a kind word from a friend. Over time, I noticed that the more I focused on gratitude, the more I saw it everywhere in the smallest details of life. I realized that there was always something to be grateful for. No matter how difficult life seemed at times, this practice of gratitude is not just about feeling good. It is about transforming our relationship with life itself. Gratitude helps us to shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. It reminds us that we have everything we need right here, right now, and that true peace comes not from seeking more, but from fully appreciating what we already have. Gratitude also opens our hearts to others. When we are grateful, we naturally become more compassionate, more willing to give, and more open to receiving. Gratitude helps us to connect with others on a deeper level, recognizing the beauty and value in their lives as well as our own. It fosters a sense of interconnection and mutual support, allowing us to build meaningful relationships based on appreciation and respect. As you continue on your journey toward cultivating an unbreakable mind, I encourage you to practice gratitude every day. Take a moment each day to reflect on the things you are grateful for. No matter how small they may seem, begin with gratitude for the present moment, for the breath in your lungs, for the simple beauty of life. Let gratitude become a foundation for your practice, and you will find that it transforms not only your mind, but your entire experience of life. Gratitude is not just a fleeting emotion, it is a practice that, when nurtured, can bring lasting peace and joy. It is the key to unlocking the beauty in every moment, to recognizing the sacredness of life as it is, and to cultivating an unbreakable mind that is grounded in contentment and resilience. As we near the conclusion of our exploration into cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now focus on a practice that is at the heart of Zen and many other spiritual traditions: the power of silence. Silence is often misunderstood in our modern world, where noise, whether physical, mental, or emotional, is ever present. But in Zen, silence is not an absence, it is a state of deep presence. It is through silence that we can connect with the truth of who we are, the truth of the world around us, and the truth of our existence. In our fast-paced, constantly connected world, silence is rare. We are constantly bombarded with information, noise, and distractions, which make it difficult to find stillness and clarity. Yet, it is in silence that we find the space to hear our inner voice, to listen to our thoughts without judgment, and to connect with the deeper aspects of our being. In Zen, silence is considered a vital practice for cultivating wisdom, inner peace, and understanding. Silence in Zen is not about forcing ourselves to be quiet or withdrawing from the world. It is about creating space for deeper awareness and reflection. It is about embracing stillness and allowing ourselves to simply be without the need to fill the space with words or distractions. In silence, we can hear the subtle whispers of truth that lie beneath the surface of our busy minds. One Zen story that illustrates the power of silence involves a young monk who approached his teacher and asked, "Master, I have been practicing for many months, but I still do not understand the true meaning of Zen. How can I truly grasp the essence of your teachings?" The teacher did not respond immediately. Instead, he gestured for the monk to follow him, and together they walked out to a quiet riverbank. The teacher sat silently by the river, looking out over the water, while the young monk sat beside him, waiting for an answer. After a long period of silence, the teacher finally spoke. Zen is not something to be understood with the mind. It is something to be experienced. In this silence, you can hear the river flowing, the wind rustling through the trees, and the birds singing. The essence of Zen is the same. It is all around you, in every moment. You don't need to seek it with your mind. You need to feel it with your heart. The young monk sat quietly, allowing the teacher's words to sink in. In that moment, he realized that Zen was not a concept to be grasped intellectually. It was a state of being, a deep experience of presence. The silence they shared allowed him to connect with something far beyond words. It was in that silence that he found the clarity he had been searching for. This story teaches us that silence is not empty. It is full of possibility. It is in silence that we can connect with the essence of life. When we quiet the mind, we make room for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. In a world that is constantly demanding our attention, silence becomes a sanctuary where we can reconnect with our inner truth. Silence is also an essential tool for mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, we bring our full attention to the present moment without distraction, but often our minds are filled with chatter, thoughts about the past, worries about the future, judgments about ourselves and others. In order to truly practice mindfulness, we must first create space for silence. This allows us to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. It allows us to witness life as it is, without the interference of our mental noise. The practice of silence helps us cultivate awareness. In silence, we can hear the subtle signals of our body and mind. We can notice the sensations in our body, the rhythms of our breath, and the flow of our thoughts. In this space, we begin to understand that everything we need is already within us. The answers we seek are not outside of ourselves. They are in the silence, waiting for us to listen. A key part of Zen silence is the ability to sit with discomfort. In our busy lives, we often avoid silence because it makes us uncomfortable. We fill the space with noise to distract ourselves from our thoughts and emotions. But Zen teaches us that it is in the moments of discomfort that we often find the greatest opportunities for growth. When we sit in silence, we allow ourselves to be with whatever arises, whether it is restlessness, anxiety, or frustration. Instead of running from these feelings, we allow them to be present, knowing that they too will pass. In the silence, we learn to sit with our emotions without judgment. We learn that we are not our thoughts or our feelings. We are the awareness behind them. This understanding is liberating. It helps us cultivate equanimity, the ability to remain calm and composed regardless of what arises. Silence helps us recognize that our thoughts are not facts. They are simply passing events in the mind. And when we allow them to come and go without attachment, we free ourselves from their hold. In my own life, I have found that moments of silence have been some of the most transformative. When I was struggling with stress and uncertainty, I would take time each day to sit in silence without distractions, without the need to achieve anything. At first, it was difficult. My mind raced with thoughts, and I felt restless. But over time, I began to notice a shift. The more I embraced silence, the more at peace I felt. I learned to sit with my discomfort, my doubts, and my fears, knowing that they were temporary. I discovered that silence was not something to fear. It was a gift that allowed me to reconnect with myself and with the world. This practice of silence is not just for meditation. It can be incorporated into every aspect of our lives. Whether we are walking, eating, or simply sitting, we can practice silence by bringing our full attention to the present moment. We can listen to the world around us, to the sounds of nature, to the rhythm of our breath, and to the subtle messages of our own hearts. As you continue on your journey of cultivating an unbreakable mind, I encourage you to practice silence. Take time each day to sit in stillness, to listen to the world around you, and to connect with the quiet space within. It is in silence that you will find clarity, peace, and the deeper wisdom that lies beyond words. Silence is not an absence. It is the presence of all things. It is the space where we can reconnect with the flow of life, where we can hear the whispers of truth, and where we can experience the depth of our own being. When we embrace silence, we open ourselves to the full richness of life, and in doing so, we cultivate an unbreakable mind. As we arrive at the final section of our exploration into cultivating an unbreakable mind, we now focus on the profound Zen practice of acceptance and gratitude toward the inevitable end, death. It is in acknowledging the impermanence of life and the certainty of death that we can truly live with peace and clarity. Death, a topic many of us avoid, is one of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience. Zen, with its emphasis on embracing reality as it is, teaches us that accepting death is not something morbid or fearful, but rather an integral part of cultivating an unbreakable mind. Throughout our lives, we often try to avoid thinking about death. We push it out of our minds, not wanting to confront the fear, uncertainty, and grief that it brings. We live as if we are invincible, as if we have all the time in the world to achieve our goals, fix our mistakes, and reconcile with others. But death is always present. Whether we acknowledge it or not, it is a part of life, and only by accepting it can we begin to live fully and authentically. Zen teaches that the awareness of death can actually be a source of freedom. When we fully embrace the impermanence of all things, we are no longer shackled by the fear of loss. We can approach life with an open heart, knowing that every moment is precious and fleeting. By accepting death, we are reminded to cherish the present, to let go of regrets and anxieties, and to live with a sense of urgency that doesn't come from fear, but from the recognition that every moment is an opportunity to experience life deeply and fully. A Zen master once said, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Practice as if you were to live forever." This paradox encapsulates the Zen approach to life and death. While we acknowledge the inevitability of death, we do not live in fear of it. Instead, we live fully, with awareness, embracing every moment as it comes. We understand that death is not an end, but a natural part of the cycle of life. It is a transition, not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be embraced with grace and understanding. In Zen, the practice of mindfulness and meditation helps us come face to face with the truth of our own mortality. When we sit in meditation, we bring ourselves into the present moment, fully aware of our breath, our body, and our thoughts. By being present with the reality of our existence, we are also present with the reality of our eventual death. This does not mean that we become obsessed with death, but rather that we cultivate a healthy awareness of it, which frees us to live more fully. One Zen story that illuminates this relationship between life and death involves a famous Zen master named Hakuin. Hakuin was once asked by a student, "Master, what happens after we die?" Hakuin replied, "Do you hear the sound of the river flowing outside?" "Yes, I do," said the student. Hakuin smiled and said, "That sound is life, and that sound will continue even when you are gone. Just as the river flows without end, life continues after death, without interruption." This teaching helps us understand that death is not the end of the river, but simply a part of its flow. Life and death are inseparable, like the river and the water. Death is not something separate from life. It is part of the same process, the same movement. When we understand this, we can live without fear of death, because we realize that it is simply another phase in the eternal flow of existence. One of the most transformative aspects of accepting death is that it helps us live with greater clarity. When we recognize that our time here is finite, we are less likely to waste it on trivial concerns or to take life for granted. We begin to focus on what truly matters: our relationships, our inner peace, and our connection to the world around us. The awareness of death gives us a sense of urgency, not to accumulate wealth or success, but to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and presence in every moment. Another Zen teaching that helps us embrace the impermanence of life is the practice of letting go. In Zen, letting go is not about abandoning our responsibilities or rejecting our attachments. It is about freeing ourselves from the emotional grip that we often place on things, people, or outcomes. It is about accepting that everything in life is temporary, and that holding on too tightly only leads to suffering. When we practice letting go, we are not giving up on life. We are simply releasing our attachment to specific outcomes and embracing life as it comes. We allow things to flow without forcing them to fit our expectations or desires. This practice of letting go can be especially powerful when it comes to the fear of death. When we stop clinging to the idea of immortality or the need for control, we can begin to live more fully and freely. Letting go does not mean that we stop caring. It means that we stop trying to control or possess. We care deeply, but we recognize that we do not own life, nor do we have control over when it will end. This realization allows us to live with greater love and appreciation, because we understand that each moment is a gift, and we do not take it for granted. As you reflect on your own life and the inevitable passage of time, I encourage you to embrace the practice of accepting death. Understand that death is not something to fear. It is a natural part of life, and it is only by accepting it that we can fully appreciate the preciousness of the present moment. Let the awareness of death deepen your connection to life, and let it inspire you to live with greater clarity, gratitude, and presence. In the end, the unbreakable mind is not one that is impervious to death, but one that understands death as an integral part of life. When we accept death, we are freed from its grip, and we can live fully, knowing that every moment is an opportunity to experience the richness of life. Death is not an end, but a continuation of the river's flow, And in this understanding, we find peace, resilience, and the unshakable calm of Zen.